Mark, so it is a discussion that is so wide. I don't even think we can exhaust even a fraction of it in 30 minutes, but we'll try. There's a moral discussion that gambling is one of the sin industries which corrupts individuals and addicts them and destroys communities and has destroyed young people in Kenya. That is one argument. There's an argument that by the government that these guys don't pay taxes. There are some people who say these guys, some of them launder money. A report says 201 billion shillings was made by the betting industry in Kenya in 2018. Only 4 billion shillings were paid in taxes. There's that. And then some of these betting firms say they invest in the community through sports sponsorships and all that. And that, according to some of them, that should insulate them from this backlash from Kenyans. Where do you stand in this, Mark, Dismas?
Then if our President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, using the powers given to me by the people of Kenya, I will ban betting in Kenya and gambling and anything associated, and I will ask Ishmael to draft that statement.
Why is my question.
Now, the why is, like that soundbite you've played, some people erroneously believe that betting and gambling is a productive economy. It's not productive at all. People in the village sit in groups and collect money and they gamble every day. Some people gamble in groups as much as 100,000. Can you imagine a group of 10 people who spend 100,000 on this? If they went and bought eggs and reared them and they hatch, they become chicken and they sell, that would be a profitable business. But betting and gambling, if Uhuru Kenyatta, I will ban it. How come Museveni has banned it in Uganda? There's no betting or gambling in Brazil, Argentina, South Korea, or even Singapore, our age mates. Why are you having it here in Kenya? That's number one. Number two, the betting companies are very good at propaganda architecture. They like lying to the nation that we're investing in public goods. And then they give token support to rugby, to football. If really the betting companies were serious about investing in the community, let them give 1 billion to research agencies. Let them give 1 billion to Kemri, or Kari or Kipra, so that they do solid research. But they camouflage their advertising budgets to claim that they're investing in the community, they are providing water. And then another fallacious piece of logic, that if you kick out the gambling companies, you're going to lose revenues in advertising, or the government is going to lose in taxation. The government can gain a lot more in taxation if you encourage these misguided youth to go into a productive economy. And that's all. I mean, are you not surprised? There are some farms that are betting farms in Kenya are able to sponsor soccer in the UK. They're able to sponsor soccer everywhere. And they literally carry money from Kisii in truckloads all the way to London. And then we are here, we break into a dance and song and say that this economy is doing very well. I mean, they really repatriate resources. So in my view, the president needs to do that. But he's going to have a serious challenge. Because these betting companies...
Reports say 50% of those revenues are repatriated.
More than that. But the challenge he's going to face is, these guys who own the betting companies know how to play with their key stakeholders. Wherever there's a Gor Mahia match or FC Leopards, you see them hobnobbing with politicians in choppers. Who pays for that bill? Wherever there's a conversation coming in the media, you see stories are being planted. And that's the challenge we face.
Mark, what's your take on this issue? Why does it may be?
First, let me tell you a story. I know of a family, personally, whose teenage son came to me asking for help because their father had decided that their way out of poverty was betting. So every cent the family has to this day is spent on betting. The young man did not go to college. His younger brother is out of school because they cannot afford fees. This is a story repeated over and over in this country. Number two, Kenyans are not betting. In their very weird minds, they're investing. As that young man said, it's an investment. How do you invest in someone else in another country successfully kicking a ball? What are you investing in? It is that mentality that makes betting in this country very dangerous. That there are people who think that it is a way of making an income. It has moved from an entertainment thing to a thing where someone is risking life and limb in the hope that he'll be that one lucky Kenyan to win 200 million shillings out of 20 billion that has been put into these companies. Number two, we've just discussed that Kenya's economy needs a boost. Yet money by the billions is leaving Mosocho, Bokoli, Marakwet, all of these places to go all the way to the United Kingdom so that some English team can run on our money. At the same time, let us not lie to Kenyans that when these companies spend 50 million, 60 million, they're helping this country. How are you helping us when the money was ours in the first place? Thirdly, gambling is only an economic activity for the country if 99% of those resources remain in that country. Las Vegas, Nevada, all those companies are American companies. So when you come out of America to spend that money there, it stays in the United States. In Kenya, we have 99% of these resources leaving this country.
Right.
And the 1% that is left, all of it is spent at Kiza Lounge. Let us be clear. Kenya is a net loser in this game. It does not matter whether Tottenham or Manchester United or Arsenal or Chelsea, whoever wins.
Right.
Kenya is losing.
All right.
It's losing its people, it's losing its money, and it's losing the work ethic of young men and women in this country.
All right. Jerotich, from Mark's story, there are people who will tell you they don't have anything else to do, like they don't have any other economic activity, and that's a real issue, like the story was given. So how do you convince such people that gambling is not the way, and how much has the government not done this? Why is the government coming now when it is seemingly a crisis? Experts say that the gambling industry it does not build the economy in any way if you analyze it. But why is the government coming now? And has the government failed to educate its people about gambling?
Unsurprisingly, the government has indeed failed to educate the population. But if I do back of the envelope math, I think about 27 or so have had their licenses suspended, and about 7 are still in play, give or take. The fact that we have about 34 to 35 betting companies in this country is indicative of a disaster of untold proportions. Be it suicide by people who can no longer cover their debt, be it fueling the despondency that has struck the heart of every Kenyan. I mean, I say Kenya is one big gambling hall. I will explain why. If you go out today driving, or you're in your matatu or you're walking, and you see these big, fat, expensive 17, 20, 25 million shilling 4x4s driving up and down. People who have invented nothing, who have produced nothing, but are somehow multimillionaires. How did they manage? We had the NYS selling air story. We have a country whose value system and accountability is so utterly frayed and decayed that the government has even lost its moral authority to say betting is wrong. So when you tell me I shouldn't bet, and I have my last 5,000 shillings on me, and I see that person who last week or last year had no money, and suddenly they're very wealthy, and you know they didn't even pass in school, never mind all of those other things, I will do what it takes. Kenya is one gambling hall, and if you're lucky, you're lucky, and if you're not lucky, you're not lucky. And this for me is the problem, and the government has allowed this to flourish. Talk about capital flight, talk about 50+% of betting revenues being banked and spent abroad. What about money stolen from our coffers? Don't we know that there are trillions of shillings sitting abroad as we speak? Capital flight is not the domain of the betting companies. Capital flight is a standard practice of those who steal money from this country, whether they say they earned it or they invented, I don't know, this, or they provided what services, it is a standard practice.
Right.
So this is a massive, massive problem. And I want to say something. The sin tax is not heavy enough on the gambling industry. And even if the gambling industry were to look at rehabilitation and positive messaging around the fact that gambling is not healthy if you reach certain levels, etc., etc. Look at the billions of dollars that Philip Morris, the world's #1 tobacco company, had to pay out when it was found culpable in the lung cancer that developed among many of its users, including the famous Marlboro men. Yeah. Do the betting companies have what it takes to rehabilitate, to prevent, to compensate? We're losing. You cannot compensate me for a life lost. So this is a massive problem. The government has been prevaricating for a very long time, and we're in very serious trouble. Right. And when you look at the number of young people voting, in fact, that is indicative of the fact that we're sitting in a country where people feel utterly hopeless.
All right. Before I come to you, Akili, as we discuss this issue, a lot of you have mentioned that many of these companies are foreign-owned companies. Let's listen into the Deputy Party Leader of the Labour Party in the United Kingdom, Tom Watson, speaking about one of those betting companies which sponsors Everton FC, an English Premier League team. Listen.
Companies licensed in the UK, sponsoring UK football teams, yet operating entirely abroad, behaving irresponsibly and fueling addiction in countries like Kenya. We have companies allowing customers to lose tens of thousands of pounds on multiple credit cards in a single sitting. We have companies who, after a customer tries to self-exclude, bombards them with advertising emails and offers of free bets, then makes them sign NDAs when they settle. The gambling market is broken, and it's up to the government to fix it. We don't just need a voluntary patch. We need a full overhaul of the rules and regulations. I fear this Secretary of State and this government.
Bonakili, the UK says it is struggling with its gambling industry. So there is a gambling industry in the UK. Should we close the gambling industry in Kenya?
No, okay, first there is a law governing how people should bet and how they should gamble in Kenya as well. And there's a law allowing companies to set business of gambling and betting in the country.
Yes,
and there are regulations actually. Yes, even there's a board regulating actually.
Yes.
Now, I think what the government has realized, and I want to clarify this to Kenyans, what the government has just suddenly realized is that there are 4 or 5 major problems in the country. One is corruption, the other one is alcoholism, and now betting, as well as insecurity. And if there's any one minister who has captured the mind of the president, it is the Internal Security Minister, who has decided now to, the only problem, he has not consulted widely, but after all, he has decided that what is going to break the president's back so that he does not meet his 4 agenda items is partly betting. Why? Because when you allow young people to believe that some magic or some mystery is going to happen in the next few minutes, you make them despondent, you make them lazy, you make them not focus and not have a business or a trade. So it is deeper than we see it today. I represented a client in court who was trying to recover money from a betting company. And what we realized is, for example, these virtual courts you're talking about, anybody can create a virtual court from wherever they are situated, not even in Kenya at a particular moment. So this thing is more complex, but it's part of the problems that are actually creating Kenyans to be more cabbage than really reasonable people. Now, it is not only Kenya. Like you said, this minister is mentioning Kenya. I don't know why he chose to mention Kenya after Everton came to Nairobi the other day. Probably he's jealous or something, but it is also a problem in their country. So betting is not just a problem in Nairobi, it's up all over, whether it is South Africa or Nigeria. It's actually a major problem, especially to the youth. Because you make a youth wake up at 6 in the morning, go to drink, then look for some 200 shillings and immediately go into betting. So it's a very serious problem, if you ask me. So what we can do in order to make sure that the youth are actually going to appreciate, one is to stop these big companies which are betting without licenses. In fact, I can't imagine that there was a big organization like the names which I've seen on the media which did not have a license or flouted its licenses. So any company being allowed to operate in the country surely should have its license and should stick to the rules attached on the license. And if this does not happen, then every young man will be cheated and start to bet. By the way, betting is, 1 minute, Ben, betting is not only as we see it through these big names. Every day you open a TV, that is betting. Somebody's promising you, you could win a chance to have this if you do this. That is nothing than gambling. So I think it is more complex, other than simply saying there are 35 betting companies. In our mobile phones, we receive messages every morning which are actually gambling.
Promotions.
And therefore they should, I think the minister should do more to ensure that the rules are followed strictly so that people are not meant to think.
Is the government more interested in, Dismas, is the government more interested in the revenues more than in the moral, I don't know, aspect of the Kenyan people and how much gambling has reportedly destroyed young people?
Well, you know, I was hoping that Ishmael, as a lawyer, was going to lift the veil of incorporation so that we know who are the real owners of these organizations. Because believe you me, the government is not interested in the revenue that goes to the national taxpayers or that goes to the national treasury. The key political leaders in Kenya do not care how much revenue is generated from betting and gambling companies. They are probably interested in lining their own pockets. And you know, there are many explanations. At some stage, about 2 years ago, taxation for everything was going up the sky, for fuel, for airtime. But betting companies had the taxation reduced from 35% to 15%. So if a government is keen on revenues, why do you give betting companies a tax break? Now, if a government is keen on revenues, why have this kind of incestuous relationship with the betting companies? That every single day, when you look at the members of the National Assembly, members of the Senate, and some of them are even donning those betting branding paraphernalia. Mm-hmm. So if the government wants to improve on our revenues, if they want to improve on our GDP, let them encourage the young boys who claim that, who think erroneously that sending money to a betting company is an investment, give them opportunities to start keeping cows or goats. That's the only way the economy can grow. I mean, a certain WhatsApp group which had a very interesting conversation this morning, that these young men and boys who cannot afford to pay for NHIF or NSSF subscription every single day, they're able to bet. Now, you've got so many people committing suicide. Mark has explained there that some people miss the opportunity of going to school. And then we come and we break into a dance and song and say, betting companies are solid. Now, if you take a walk to some of the car parks of these betting companies, the kind of vehicles you see will shock you. Some of those big motor vehicle companies probably release those vehicles in Kenya before they do it in the European markets.
Let me be the devil's advocate here and ask, this issue has been brought to the fore more now because of the new phenomenon that is sports betting online, right? But some people would argue that betting is not a new phenomenon in Kenya. We always have promotions every now and then that do this, you have this drink, remove the cap, there's a number, you can win this, you can win millions. Is it any different?
Ben, there's time and season for everything. So now this is the time to crack down on betting.
Okay. But also, Ben, let's be very clear that number one, the level of gambling in this country has shot up many times after online betting came on board. Right. But also, let's be clear that if I'm selling sweets, okay, sweets is a bad example. So I'm selling soda, right? And I tell you, buy my bottle of soda, and you could win a car. Okay? Number one, that promotion is meant to sell more bottles of soda.
All right.
Meaning the person who's putting his money is getting a product out of it. So the value in what he has bought is intrinsic. There's intrinsic value in the soda, in the toilet paper, in whatever it is that you've bought that you have. Now the probability that this company will then give you a car on top of that is actually good. Now how does that work and work better for the economy? Right. If that soda company is able to sell more sodas, good for the economy. It's also able to raise more taxes, good for the economy. Right. More sodas also mean more jobs for the Kenyans, good for the economy. Now, let's look at online betting. The algorithm for the next game is 1. Whether 1 million Kenyans put in money, 2 million, 200 million,
Right.
it does not change.
Right.
Their expenditure in this country is zero. Let me ask the question. Where is the IT software located? Where is the server?
All right.
The truth
Good
is...
question, good question.
all
Because of time...
these things
Yes.
have a net negative effect on the Kenyan economy. To continue to say that we want them to pay 15% tax is a waste of time.
All right.
They should be taxed 10 times more than we tax alcohol, 10 times more than cigarettes, because it's worse.
All right.
And there's no benefit. At least the guy who takes alcohol gets drunk.
All right. We will continue with this conversation. We have not exhausted all the important points we need to talk about. Let's take a quick commercial break, though. Here on Inside Politics, we are talking about gambling menace in the country. Over 12 million Kenyans are actively betting online. The government has been cracking on those betting firms. We are having as wide of a conversation as we can. Don't go too far.